Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women in Motorsports. Joe San Diego and Daniele from Racer the Girls Behind the Helmet and Ben Schneider. Link in the video description to his channel. And of course, we encourage everyone to visit the website racersbehindthehelmet.com. And also check out the links to our Patreon, Call the Show, Mark, Robin, and David, our newest investors, invest in the Grid Network each and every month, helping us stay on the air. And you can also contribute through Buy Me a Coffee, where you could do a one-time or multiple cups of coffee for all of us here on the Grid Network, or your favorite on-air personality. Now, one of the big things, we had the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series at Kansas for the Heart of America 200. First time we had two female racers in this race, Ben. Starting with, of course, the driver a lot of people been following all year long, Hailie Deegan. Of course, Hailie Deegan trying to get into the top 10 for the playoffs. Overall, pretty solid day. Finished 12th after starting 16th, now 15th in the points, and she is 37 points away from the playoff cut line. The big story, though, Toni Breidinger making her Truck Series debut. She just ran the ARC race earlier that day. She qualified 24th. I know we had a lot of discussions about, considering her past ARCA performances, would this be a smart move? She came home 15th place, one lap down. Many compared her debut to Hailie Deegan's, of course, where she did finish one position ahead. Overall, it looks like the same truck where Hailie Deegan back in 2020, David Gillian Racing with Ford. It's sort of the same team, Tricon, but now with Toyotas this year. Toni gained 9 positions on her Truck Series debut. Hailie, 2020, gained 18 positions. How was Toni's race, and what similarities or differences do you see between Toni and Hailie's debut in the Truck Series?
Well, I guess I'll take the first part of that question first. I think it was phenomenal for Toni Breidinger. And I think that, one of the big differences is everybody, really had a lot of expectations for Hailie based on what she'd accomplished in K&M West, what's now the ARCA Menard Series West and the ARCA Menard Series National Tour in 2020. Whereas we talked about on this show, Toni Breidinger has, let's just call it what it is. She struggled quite a bit with Venturini compared to her teammates in the ARCA Menard Series the last couple of years. And I think that with that in mind, I think people were keeping their expectations in check here, not necessarily expecting, a top 10 run or anything like that. Just the goal for Toni, like we said a couple of weeks ago on the show, just needed to be bring the truck home in one piece, log as many laps as you can, and gain all the experience you can. And she went out and I think did even more than that to get a top 15 finish, the best for a female driver on her debut in the Truck Series. Broke that was Hailie's record with 16th a couple of years ago here at Kansas. And it would have been a lead lap finish as well if the race had been just a few laps shorter. So she did everything she needed to do, I think, to prove that this was a good opportunity for her to gain some experience for a driver who had never raced a truck before. To go out and do that, I think is absolutely a success. And I think it shows that Toni should maybe get another opportunity to do some more Truck Series races later this year if such an opportunity comes together. We'll have to wait and see if anything gets announced. But, you bring up moving up through the field, Joe. I think one of the important things to remember is Hailie made her debut in 2020 in the fall when we were still thoroughly in the pandemic restrictions era. So there was no qualifying. It being Hailie's debut with the metrics, she would have had to start well in the back. So that really would have disadvantaged her. I'm not sure where she would have qualified if we had time trials that day. I'd assume she would have been a little bit further up the field. Granted, she was in some solid equipment, but it was her debut, so who knows what would have happened there. But she certainly had a tougher hill to climb on that day based on where Toni started on the field this past weekend at Kansas. So, again, a lot of similarities, obviously the same track and I guess by extension, the same team, even though they're now under a different name with a different manufacturer. But at the same time, I think, Toni has a lot to be proud of, just as Hailie did on that day in 2020 as well. I think this is really something to build on and can maybe even be a confidence boost for her going back to the ARCA Menard Series and then later this year, the GR Cup, whatever else she's doing in 2023. This is a great run.
Yeah, very great run, and I have to agree with you. You really can't compare the two of their debuts just because of all the different circumstances, the pandemic, no qualifying, as you mentioned. On paper, it looks like the same team. They just switched manufacturers, but there's been a lot of changes from 2020 to 2023. We'll bring Daniel in for this part of this conversation. Now, Daniel, some have said drivers seem to do better in different series compared to other series. I know after this race, some of us were talking in our own chat with our Grid Network colleagues about how it seems like maybe Tony just seems a bit better suited in the truck series car, truck compared to the Arkham in our series car. Haley Deegan, as we mentioned, she made the switch from it was then the K&N series up to ARCA, then the truck series. Do you believe that's the case? And Daniel, are there some cases in Europe where a driver may underperform in one level, but then take a next step up, and then all of a sudden that car just seems to better suit their character, and they just seem to drive a lot better?
I think this is something that happens all the time, and if, to some extent also happened to Deegan as well when she went from the last year towards the end of last year from the truck to the Xfinity racing in making her Xfinity debut when she was straight in pace and was very competitive. And I think there are some categories for a multitude of reasons when you kind of struggle. Could be the car, could be the team, could be the series itself, and then you step up, and on paper it should be much harder, and then you actually find something and you're more competitive. I think also of many drivers in FIA Formula 3 and FIA Formula 2, for example. Somehow the Formula 3 is really tough. They make the jump up to Formula 2, and everyone is saying, yeah, but maybe they have not proven yet in a Formula 3 level, and somehow they managed to be up front in Formula 2. I'm for example, Felipe Drugovich. He was nowhere to be found at the front of the Formula 3 grid. He went to Formula 2, and nobody would have really expected him to do well, and he won races and in Formula 2, so and won the championship, of course. So I would say that it happens all the time, and it's not there are many factors in motorsport. So somehow it just works out, and hopefully for Toni, it's one of those cases.
Yeah, Daniel, it's a great example as well with Deegan last year making her Xfinity debut, Las Vegas coming home 13th. I think that, again, was a very similar situation. This was a driver that had struggled for the most part in the truck series, and people were saying maybe this is a step too far too quickly, but she went out and ran all the laps and came home with a very, very solid finish. And again, we'll see, what Haley's future plans are. Obviously, she's focused on trucks primarily this year, but I'm sure if the opportunity came up to do another Xfinity start or two, she would certainly be open to that opportunity. But again, you can't say enough about the job that Toni Breidinger did this past weekend at Kansas. I mean, this is a truck series field with past champions such as Matt Crafton, Ben Rhodes, Zane Smith. In the field, you had two Cup drivers in this race as well, Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain. You had seasoned veterans. You had very highly rated young prospects trying to work their way up. So this is a very, very tough series to compete in, and to come home with a top 15 again is absolutely fantastic for Toni Breidinger.
Yeah, what a fantastic debut. Definitely has to build that confidence, and especially potential of maybe more truck series races in the future. Now, the next truck series race, of course, is going to be tonight. Darlington Raceway, the Lady in Black. Haley Deegan, her best finish, 20th in 2021. 2022 crashed out of this event. It's talked often in Darlington, you're not racing a competition, you're not racing the vehicle ahead of you, you're racing the racetrack because it's so tough. And the trucks, they have sheet metal, they don't have the composite body, so if they get that Darlington stripe, it's bad news. Is that the case for Haley Deegan today, to just race her own race?
I think so. I think that's the case for most of these drivers, if we're being honest. There's a lot of young drivers in the truck series that are still learning, gaining experience. A lot of them, this will be their first time at the track. So I think that, it's obviously a very difficult track to go to for the first time. I still remember back when Danica Patrick was doing her part-time Cup Series season in 2012, Tony Stewart said this was one of the tracks that they wanted to put on her schedule because of how important that experience is to log laps here at this track. It's very, very difficult for young drivers to come to and adapt quickly. It definitely takes some time. So again, I think Haley, even though it's not her rookie year in the Truck Series, you still have to keep your expectations in check here and make sure that you run all the laps, complete all the laps, and continue to build on some strong runs that she's had. She certainly has taken a little bit of a step forward here with Motorsport. She's had some very solid top 15 finishes, even a top 10 finish. I know NASCAR doesn't log the top 15s, but she is certainly off to a better start than she was the DGR truck last year. But at the same time, still plenty of room to grow and continue to gain that experience. Hopefully she can pick some more of that up here at Darlington.
Continue that possible momentum. Try to get in the top 10. I know that'll be something big goal of her. We just know Darlington, too tough to tame. It's going to be a challenge for everyone tonight, and then of course all weekend long at Darlington. Now, been talking a lot about the last weekend in Kansas. We also had F1 Academy wrapping up their first 2 race weekends in a row. They're off to, essentially, it seems like a pretty exciting start where you caught Marta Garcia, the points leader. She has won 3 out of the 6 races because in the 2 race weekends, 3 races each. But we still have Bianca Bustamante. She captured a win. And then the Alcabasi sisters. Each of them have a win already. So we have 6 races done, 4 different race winners, but only from 2 teams, MP and Prima. Daniel, are you surprised by this so far?
I'm surprised. I'm not particularly surprised that we've seen, wins from Prema, from Marta Garcia, and from the Alcobisi sisters, because of course they had some experience in Formula 4. Also, great run for Bianca Bustamante last weekend in Valencia. I think I'm pleasantly surprised that in this series we've seen a lot of drivers potentially battling for victories. A lot of them, 9 already stepped on the podium. So there is most of the grid. From what I'm seeing, is able to contest for a podium finish, which is great because on the eve of this series. It was, especially in preseason testing, it was a lot about Abby Pulling versus Marta Garcia. It was looking like possibly a two drivers fight for the title here. This is not the case. This is this is what we've seen in the 2 opening weekends. Of course, it's still early to say, but from what we've seen in Austria and then in Valencia, we see that a lot of drivers are out there potentially being on pace for victories. The races have been really good. The racing has been great. There's been some very close racing throughout the field, and not only for the very top positions, but for example, there are, in my opinion, what I've seen, and I've probably been one of the very few people that have seen all the races, because of course they're not televised. But possibly the top 5, they still have a bit of a pace advantage, but then the whole field is very much compressed into a few tenths of a second. And from 5th down, pretty much everyone is battling few tenths of a second from point scoring finish, and that's great to see, actually, because it was not clear immediately after the preseason testing. What you mentioned about Prema and MP, I think it's also down to the races that we've seen so far, because in Austria, the Red Bull Ring is a track that is visited by the Italian Formula 4 Championship, for example. So Prema has a lot of experience there. Then we went to Valencia, and MP Motorsport and Campos Racing are doing also the Spanish Formula 4 Championship. That series goes to Valencia. So I think at the beginning we've seen the teams with the most experience of these particular tracks doing well. Of course, Prema has a huge experience with working with the Formula 4 machinery. Campos also did well with a lot of podium finishes with Nerea Marti. They did pole position in Valencia. She had 2 second place finishes. So she's also one to watch, even though she had some technical issues. But I think those three teams did extremely well because they had some good experience on these tracks. Coming forward in Barcelona, for example, where we go next weekend, is a track that pretty much all teams know, because it's a track that everyone goes there to test in any category, from pretty much every kind of Formula 4, 3 to all teams or junior teams go to Valencia at one point or another in the year to test. So that is going to be, I think, more representative, because all teams have reference data in Barcelona. So I think we are seeing some, we are going into an interesting weekend for F1 Academy.
Interesting weekend, and I have to say, just seeing the competition, at least when it comes to the numbers, the results, so many drivers on the podium, it seems like this has been very competitive. And the thing I've sort of been noticing too is a lot of talk about the racing. We're not hearing about like major crashes or a driver dominant. It just seems it's really close competition, which is really exciting, especially since we have separate teams. We don't have what the W Series had with spec vehicles. I think that, as you mentioned too, a lot of people thought it was going to be Abby Pulling versus Marta Garcia. I would throw in there Nira Marti too. I thought it would be three people dominating. We're not seeing that. It's been really close competition, but unfortunately, we're not being able to talk about it on a much bigger scale because there's no racing coverage for this. And we'll bring in Ben for this part because we got 6 races done. Unfortunately, still no television coverage. Plans have been announced. Hopefully, something's coming up. And while it's exciting to say that, we've had 4 different winners, the competition's great. We had 9 drivers on the podium. Hardly anybody has seen that because it's not even streaming on F1 TV or anywhere. F1 during the pre-race show, if you were watching on F1 TV for Miami, they just had a quick, oh, there's Susie Wolf. She's part of F1 Academy. The race winners said the race winners, and we support F1 Academy. Now back to F1 and the big Miami Grand Prix countdown and all that. Compared to last year where we had the W Series sharing the spotlight with F1, it just felt like, okay, that's sort of a big step backward compared to where we were last year with the W Series sharing the spotlight at Miami in front of American audience, which we know women's sports seem to be really starting to pick up here. Ben, starting with you, does it feel like there's a void with the W Series and television coverage missing?
And Joe, I got to be honest with you and keep Daniel on the screen here for at least a couple of seconds because I want to tell him personally, thank you for all the work that you're doing to cover this series. Because if I weren't doing this show on a part-time basis, if I weren't following your Twitter feed and social media feed, I might not even know this series exists. I mean, I've seen so little from Formula One themselves. I've seen, very little in terms of press releases and in terms of, updates as to who's winning these races, where these races are even taking place. It's been very difficult to follow. And, for a series that, is trying to promote, the whole We Race as One message and, wanting to see more diversity in the field over the next decade or so and the steps that they're taking to do that and promoting women in racing, all those things are great, but you have to, practice what you preach and actually promote the series that you've just launched here, that in a lot of ways kind of killed off the previous series that was trying to do that in W Series. It's just mind-boggling to me, and I said this much on the show a couple of weeks ago talking with you, Joe, that we're 2 race weekends in now, and there's still not even a hint of, well, maybe there's TV coverage coming, maybe they're going to stream the races live somewhere. I mean, the fact that there's absolutely nothing is still just absolutely crazy to me, and it really makes me question this commitment that Formula One, FOM, the FIA seem to be making here, and how serious they are in doing so. When there's not a way to watch these races live, how in the world can you expect your audience to stay invested and follow the series as closely as they follow other series which are freely available through streaming or through television or whatever? It's really, really a troubling sign to me that that this seems to be flying under the radar as much as it is, And again, we've got to thank the hardworking people in the paddock like Daniel who are doing what they can to get the message out there about this series. But at the same time, I think it's really a massive misstep from Formula One here that they're seeming to not think that this is a massive enough issue to get the ball rolling on this. Because if we don't have TV coverage at this point, I'm not sure we will at any point this season.
Well, I think there's no sugarcoating here. It was a misstep. It was a huge mess. Talking about the TV rights, the TV coverage, because at the beginning of the season, when the first race was approaching, everyone was really looking where can we watch this new championship? Because the hype was big. There was a lot of expectations to actually see these races, and also let me tell you that the fact that there has been some social media criticism especially during the first weekend, it's a good sign, because you actually see that there is a potential there, that people are willing to watch these women race. There is attention and people want to watch this sport. This is important, because if it was the case that nobody cared, that would be much more troubling for F1. This is not the case, and this is important. That said, of course, the F1 management just before the first weekend said that it was an issue of infrastructure. That of course, racing as first year with not together with Formula One, but in separate weekends, it was an issue of infrastructure, that they couldn't fly all the equipment and TV crews to cover the races. That obviously proved to be not the case, not to be right, because of course the races, and I was there for both weekends, are being recorded, because of course they are doing the highlights program that is being released during the week, both on YouTube and on F1 TV. So of course it's not a matter of infrastructure, because of course if you take also Italian Formula 4, Spanish Formula 4, British Formula 4, all these championships do not have the same infrastructure as Formula One. You don't need that kind of infrastructure to have a TV coverage or even a YouTube live, So that was not correct. And what it obviously is now being more clear is that it's a TV right issue, simply. That Formula One management wants to make some money out of this product, and broadcaster so far has not been eager to spend some extra money on the out of the package that they already have, that include FIA Formula 2 and FIA Formula 3. This is pretty much the situation right now, and so far I do not particularly believe, but this is my opinion, that we are going to have for the first year, except for maybe Kota, a live TV coverage of F1 Academy. It's the news of last week that F1 Academy will have its docu series, which is possibly going on Apple TV, but they don't take this for granted. Which is great news, of course. It's really important. We've seen how this can be important for sport. But let me tell you that, in my opinion, this should not interfere with the live coverage, because any serious championship needs, to be treated like a serious series and have a live TV coverage, in order for the people to be invested and to follow these drivers and follow these athletes and everything. So the big elephant in the room after the first 2 weekends of F1 Academy was that, yes, it was a step backwards compared to W Series on the TV coverage side and on the spectator side, but also in my opinion, it was a step forward for the development of the drivers, because they have, and I can see this being on track, they have a lot of track time. That is really important. Drivers like Bianca Bustamante, for example, have a lot of track time, and you can see clearly how much she has improved. And now she was at the back last year in W Series, and when I'm talking to her, she tells me that she struggled last year because there was not so much track time in W Series. Also, in F1 Academy, they are doing a pre-event test day. They had 2 testing day of collecting testing after Valencia. They had before the first round. It's a lot of track time, and this is really making the difference career-wise for these drivers that are improving a lot every time they are in the car. But of course, you have to put it together and have the idea. In an ideal world, you would have the track time of F1 Academy with the coverage of W Series. That would be the ideal product.
Yeah,
Joe, if I can just follow up real quickly. I remember back when Haley Deegan was getting started in what was then K&M West, and I was really around the time I started to follow those series on the same level that I follow the 3 national series. I can tell you firsthand that the group chats that I was in, the friends that I was following these series with, we were frustrated enough that those races weren't live; they were on tape delay, and NBCSN put them in the middle of the week at like 5 p.m. on a Thursday, and they condensed it down to an hour when these races are in reality usually close to an hour 45 minutes or 2 hours. So they cut a lot of the racing out and only really showed some extended highlights. We were frustrated enough that we have that. Correct me if I'm wrong, F1 Academy doesn't have anything right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, they have a 15-minute highlights that they released on YouTube on the Wednesday after the race.
But even then, that still doesn't compare to the limited stuff that we were getting with K&N back in the day, and we were frustrated enough with that. And then Fans Choice came along in 2019 and started broadcasting the races for free, and that was great. And then, of course, they put it behind a paywall, but at least it is still available. You have to pay Flow Racing quite a bit of money for the subscription, but it is available if you want it. So, there needs to be, I'm obviously not going to add too much to what you just said because you hit the nail right on the head there, but there needs to be something, because otherwise it's going to be impossible for the casual fans, at the very least, the Formula One fans who are just hearing about the series for the first time, might have some interest in it. If they know that there's nothing that they can do to watch it, what point is there for them to stick around and try to follow the series full time?
Absolutely, but also not only for fans, obviously, but also for the drivers themselves, because W Series was free to enter, and this series, albeit it is still the cheapest Formula 4 racing available, they're still paying 150k euros to enter. So somehow they do have to find sponsors. What are you getting for the sponsors in return? Nothing right now. So this is also something that will have to be looked into in the coming rounds.
And if they're releasing short highlight packages on YouTube, somebody's got to be taping these races, right? It's not like they don't have the cameras there and the equipment all ready to go. So it's a complete misstep, 100%.
Yeah, it's something else where I just think of how last year seemed, especially with W Series in Miami, seemed that was really starting to take off the last couple of years here in the United States with races in COTA and everything. And then for it to just stop, go away, I think for the casual fans, where's the W Series? Well, look, we got this new F1 camera. Oh, that's great. How do I see it? Well, that's we're working on that, as F1 is probably telling folks, but it's like, yeah, it's been a pretty big misstep. It has been a bit frustrating to see, okay, they're recording, they're posting on social media video clips. I mean, I bet if we were to get the full race, even with a little bit tape delay, something would be better than nothing, but it's still just missing that action where I think now with social media, you see it with like Joshua Birch watch along. People love to watch something live, share their reaction with people in a room. That social engagement, that is just missing. I'm hopeful F1 Academy gets that changed up. Now, of course, F1 Academy, Marta Garcia, 26 points lead over Hamda Al-Kabasi, the only driver within range to get the points lead in the next race. Now, of course, each race weekend is 3 races, but it's a different point structure. You still have 25 points for the win, down to 10th place one. You get pulled of 2 points, fastest lap bonus point, and then 20-minute race. Only the top 8 score points, so it's very interesting. Barcelona the next round. Valencia, Spain the next round. Near Marti, Lini Buller, they're in the top 4 as well in the points. And then, of course, Hamda Al-Kabasi, 5th place. Daniel, which drivers have been the biggest surprise, both with good performances and those are underperforming expectations?
That's a very interesting question. I would say that Hamda Al-Kubaisi, we all knew that she was a really possible contender, but she had a big injury 2 months before the start of the season. She broke her arm in the last round of the Formula 4 UAE, and nobody, not even her, knew if she could have been at the start of the first round. She did so, and even though her arm was not still in a great condition, she is somehow driving with one hand, and I mean, she's doing pretty much of a miracle right now to just be in the car, and so her victory in Valencia was something really spectacular and important. So for her to be there second now in the point standings is huge. So I would say, even though if it was not particularly a surprise to see her winning races, because she had also won 6 other races in Formula 4, to be even just driving in those conditions is quite a big deal. Marta Garcia, of course, it's really she's doing great. She's with probably the best team. She is quite experienced as well. She was already winning races in W Series and getting podiums, so quite to be expected. Nerea Marti also, she has been quite unfortunate with a couple of technical issues. She's also got a disqualified in the first race at Red Bull Ring. For a technical infringement that was not really her fault. So I think she can possibly be the next one to win a race. Lina Buller has been great and very, very consistent. She's the driver that has the most amount of podium finishes right now. So I would say that possibly with some good luck in qualifying, she can also start to win races. Then we've got some rookies, some really interesting rookies, like, for example, Chloe Grant and Chloe Chong, that also we had on the show a couple of weeks ago. They're doing well. Chloe Grant had a P4 in Valencia, and Chloe Chong had a P6 both at Red Bull Ring and at Valencia. So they are scoring points, and they're doing well, and getting some important mileage and experience in the battles in the midfield. We have Maite Cáceres, that was really struggling at Red Bull Ring, and then she made a huge step forward at Valencia, and she got her first top 10 in race 2. We have some a lot of drivers doing quite well, and I believe the only driver that is underperforming, quite not for her fault as well, is Abby Pulling, because she had 2 pole positions at Red Bull Ring. Rodin Carling, her team, was disqualified. All 3 cars from Carling were disqualified from the qualifying in Austria, and also not Abby's fault as well, but the team had used a component that was not homologated for F1 Academy, and this was they are also racing in the British Formula 4, and that component is allowed in British Formula 4. So it was a bit of a mistake from the team that at the first round of a new championship, that can, of course, it's a mistake, but it cost quite a lot to Abby Pulling. And then starting from the back, she has been struggling quite a lot to recover, to gain positions. And this was also the case at Valencia, where she had Valencia. The big topic was track limits, because in Valencia, the whole qualifying order was shuffled after a series of track limits infringement, and so the orders was quite mixed up, and Abby, that should have started P2, was again at the back, and again she struggled to recover positions during the races. So bottom line is that she didn't score any points in race 1 and race 2. Then she eventually got her first podium in race 3, which was okay, but still she had not the pace of either Marta Garcia or Nerea Marti, and also Hamda Al-Kubaisi, that has also started at the back for a variety of reasons in Austria and in Valencia for track limits, and in Austria for an engine issue. She did manage to get back at front. So I think Abby Pulling is now quite the one that we were expecting to be much further up the standings right now after 6 races. And on the other hand, I think we have a lot of drivers doing extremely well. Hamda, for example, with a broken wrist and an arm, just recovering and winning races as well. And also Amna, I'm really happy for Amna. Let me say this, because she had been away from a race car for quite some time. Her last full season of racing was in 2019. Then the pandemic kind of put her career on a hold, and also had some random one-off races here and there. But she's now back to a full season opportunity, and again she's on pace, and she had won 1 race, and she also had another couple of podiums. So both the Alcobaisi sisters doing really well. And Bianca Bustamante doing extremely well in race 2 with the Prema car. So I believe that we have some more drivers potentially winning races. As I mentioned, Lina Buller and Nerea Marti was being quite unfortunate, but she's also recovering in the point standings. And we have probably 5-6 drivers always up there and potentially winning races.
Yeah, it's been a really great start, just seeing how competitive it is. I know I was one of those. I was thinking it's going to be Abby Pullen, Marta Garcia, Nerea Marti, up towards the front. Still amazing that for Nerea Marti, not the start that she wanted. Same with Abby Pullen, just 1 podium so far. That has been a surprise. I think a lot of folks, especially folks that just followed the W Series, thought W Series driver, former W Series driver, is going to come in, be up towards the front, but really everyone's showing to them, and especially I think Lina Buller, hey, that's not the case. You're going to have to contend with me, and people are starting to learn more about, okay, who's Lina Buller, the Alcabasi sisters. And it's really been exciting to see how they're really mixing it up. Overall, considering everyone's on their own different teams, the racing has been close. I think it's been a great start. The missing aspect, as we talked about, that could just really elevate this to the next level, the televised coverage, so that way we can have more people talking, analyzing the races and the results. Daniel, thank you again so much, as Ben mentioned, for being there that weekend. Along with them, though, we also had some Euro NASCAR competition over there.
Oh, yes. Actually, the F1 Academy was supporting Euro NASCAR, which was also my first time that I attended a Euro NASCAR race. And I have to say that I was extremely pleased. It was a beautiful weekend for Euro NASCAR. It's a great environment. It's super fan friendly. There's a lot of people watching the races, and it's really, really great to see in Europe. Of course, it's not the same thing as the American NASCAR. It's not the same car as the Cup cars, or not even the same amount of the same level of competition that you guys have over there in the States for 3 national series. But it's still very developing, and there's a lot of people getting to know this sport and coming to see the races. And it was really, really great to see, with some very family friendly as well, and the level of the driver, I'm pleased to say that it's growing a lot, and there's been some great drivers also trying to get to ARCA from what I know. That said, we had 3 female drivers there. Two of them are stepping up to the Euro NASCAR Pro class, because in Euro NASCAR we have two classes, the Pro and the Euro NASCAR 2 class. It's a very interesting format because it's the same car from the same team, but it's split in two drivers. So one driver, and this is also very cost effective, because they are effectively the two drivers that are racing, one in Euro NASCAR 2 and one in Euro NASCAR Pro, are splitting the bill basically with the same team and the same car, but also this means that the team have a huge work to do, because the same car has to compete in two different categories in the different in the same day. But the two drivers that they were contesting the Euro NASCAR 2, two female drivers, Michaela Dorchikova and Alina Leubnegger, they were racing Euro NASCAR 2 last year, and they made a step up to Euro NASCAR Pro. So it was the first time for them in the top category, and they did quite well, even though for Michaela Dorchikova it was a very eventful weekend. She's coming back from she has an interesting story. She's coming back from a back injury. She broke her spine last year in a rally incident. She's racing all over from a rally cross, karting, auto slalom, circuits, NASCAR. She's doing a lot of stuff, and also she's the team manager in WEC for ARC Bratislava in the FIA World Endurance Championship. And she was coming back to racing after an injury last year. But unfortunately, she had quite an eventful weekend because she had very little track time. She had a clutch issue in practice, a scary brake failure in qualifying. Fortunately, she went off at turn one, quite a huge speed, but she emerged uninjured. Then the car was put back together for race one, where she had an engine issue. So it was quite a difficult weekend for her. And also in the last race, a driver jumped at the start and kind of hit her at the start, even before the green flag was waved at the start. Then he got a penalty, but of course she also had some damage, bodywork damage, and she was asked by the officials to come back and fix the car. So she lost one lap very early in the race. It was a bit of a shame for her, because she had quite a good pace, and when luckily for her there was a safety car, so she could catch back the group. And once she had caught back with the rest of the field, she was running quite well and battling towards the around P20. She came home with a P20, which was kind of okay after all the misfortune that she had in that weekend. And Alina Leubnegger came home with a P17. So a good weekend for them, just learning the new category, even though it's the same car, as I mentioned, but different level of drivers. So as a first time out for them, it was not too bad. And the Euro NASCAR next race will be in Brands Hatch, but Michaela Dorchikova currently has the budget only for 3 rounds, so she will be back at Most in Czech Republic, which is going to be the 4th round of the series.
And we encourage everyone, be sure to visit the website racersbehindthehelmet.com, get a full report of the Euro NASCAR as well as other series we haven't talked about today in the show. And of course, racersbehindthehelmet.com. You can follow them on social media as well throughout the 2023 racing year. Now, of course, we'll bring back Ben for our one shining moment. Daniel, starting with you from the past. I know we missed last weekend. For the past 2 race weekends, what is your one shining moment?
My shining moment's going to be race 1 of Valencia F1 Academy, with a victory for Hamza Al-Kubaisi, coming back to the top step of the podium 75 days after being hospitalized with a shattered arm. So for me, that is going to be my shining moment.
I think it has to be Toni Breidinger. I think she vastly outperformed a lot of people's expectations, getting a top 15 on debut, the best ever for a female driver in the NASCAR Truck Series. I think it sets her up well from a confidence standpoint for the rest of the racing that she's got this year, and it could lead to some future truck opportunities down the road for her. So that is my one shining moment. I also want to say, get well soon, Isabella Robusto. She was supposed to make her ARCA East debut this weekend at the Nashville Fairgrounds. Unfortunately, she's still recovering from her concussion, so Venturini we'll have Gio Ruggiero making his debut in the series instead. Hopefully, Robusta will be well enough to compete in Elko later next month in June and continue to make her starts as planned throughout the rest of the season. But get well soon, Isabella. We're all thinking about you, and hope we can see you back on the track soon.
My shining moments coming from F1 Academy, well, it's going to Lena Buller. I feel Lena Buller off to a great start with 3 podiums, 2 second-place finishes. Overall, when F1 Academy was announced, I think a lot of people, as I mentioned earlier, thought, okay, whichever driver from the W Series come here is going to dominate. Lena Buller was one of the first drivers to be announced for the F1 Academy. I think a lot of people overlooked her for the bigger names from the W Series, the Alcabasi sisters. Lena Buller has really, I think, done an impressive job so far. I'm really excited to see her potential this year in F1 Academy. Of course, we're going to be following F1 Academy and a bunch of racing series all year long here on the Grid Network. Encourage everyone to click on the link to be one of our Patreon subscribers. Call the show Mark, Robin, David, all invest in us each and every month. They help us pay the bills. They help us get to the tracks. Hopefully, if we hit the goal of $500 a month, we could really get to the tracks more often. And you could do buy me a coffee. You could buy a cup of coffee for a particular on-air person as well. Just put in the form that this coffee is for whoever you want to give coffee to, and we'll send it to them. And be sure to follow us on social media. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs. And be sure to subscribe. That helps us get to more motorsports fans, viewers out there that will really enjoy this content. And of course, be sure to comment in the videos your thoughts, and especially pick a winners. You can find that on social media as well. A lot going on, and of course, more racing series to be covered this weekend. Grid Life pre-race, then the wrap-up show where we have MotoGP, IndyCar, NASCAR World Rally Championship. I know Ben and Brandon on Grid Encore. They're going to have NASCAR Truck Series, the Xfinity Series with Josh there. Hopefully Moto2, Moto3, a couple other series as well. Very busy weekend. And of course, RacerBehindTheHelm.com for all the female racers racing across the world. For Daniel Zaria, Racers, the Girls Behind the Helmet, and Ben Schneider, I'm Joe Sandiego. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.